First story, my marriage is ruined over my husband's Republican political views, which might bother our daughter in the future, and his views on abortion. I, 33F, and my husband, 37M, were having a discussion about politics, and we got onto the topic of our daughter, 7F, which led to me expressing my fears about her rights and bodily autonomy. For context, my husband votes Republican, and I have always considered myself independent, but recently have been shifting very far away from my younger carefree attitude towards politics. I love him very much, and I know for a fact that he loves me, but I have started finding his opinions naive and lacking depth. He is a very good man, though, and has in the past changed his mind on several things when confronted with them. Further context. My cousin lives in a strict anti-abortion state, and almost died a few years ago when the doctors waited until she was actively dying of sepsis before they decided it was okay to remove the dead baby from her body, even though it had been dead for weeks beforehand. So needless to say, I had a wake-up call and sharpened up my principles until they are very shiny and pointy last night when we were talking about abortion rights being healthcare. I lost my composure out of sheer terror about the possibility of a similar disaster with my cousin happening to our daughter, and how I struggled to understand how he doesn't see the problem with his party, and that in fact I think he is being willfully ignorant to the danger I and my daughter face in favor of his idea about making economics work for our family. I also said that if our daughter dies due to something preventable, like the ability to get a timely and much-needed abortion, or get shot to death in school, that I would let my own mother rot in a nursing home. She votes her too, and I'd never be able to look him in the face again, which would basically be me disappearing and divorcing him. I was crying and upset and explaining how scared I was, and he asked me in a very hurt manner if I'd actually abandon him like that. I am truthful to a fault and said that I would, perhaps out of a sense of illogical grief and betrayal, because I'd know my concerns were not taken seriously and that they had abandoned common sense and did nothing to attempt preventing a very real consequence of voting away mine and my daughter's right to health care. I equated it to a slow-motion car wreck with our daughter in mortal danger and him just watching it happen because it doesn't involve his own body. I know he needs to hear it, but I think I was too raw and open about it to steer the conversation in a healthy way, and I have a very blunt manner. I apologized this morning for saying that I'd leave him, even though I knew I would, and he tentatively accepted it, and I said we'd talk about things later, when I can articulate things in a healthier way. But I'm at a loss as to how to make it known how deadly serious this is to me, and not make him feel like I'd abandon our marriage over just any sensitive topic. I do not need people telling me to leave him. I don't think I know how to make it any more digestible, and be clear without going nuclear, over something that has not happened as our daughter is too young to suffer. Yet the rub is that I am the person who is changing the dynamic of our relationship, and I am beginning to understand how politics breaks up. Families' relevant comments. Princess Canil asked him to name scenarios in which he would accept the premature death of his daughter. Ask him to name what life-saving health he would be willing to deny for his daughter, based on principles, if he can't name any. Ask him why abortion is different. Use your cousin's story as a hypothetical for your daughter, but be as graphic with it as you can be. But in all honesty, if you must labor so much to convince him to care about yours and your daughter's health and well-being, then this should also serve as a wake-up call to you. And if I were you, I'd take back your apology. You meant what you said, and only apologized to comfort him. I say let him be uncomfortable. Why are you so concerned with the bluntness of your words and not concerned about how quick he is to dismiss you? Allower 22, I'm the daughter of a Republican dad and liberal mom. I'm honestly not sure why they are still together, and think it is because they are older and retired. Luckily, I live in a liberal state that doesn't take away human rights, so I think it allows my mom not to think about it as much. It's been since Trump that I've really seen the division between them. I don't really have any advice to give you, but the perspective from a daughter in a similar type of situation. I love my dad, but I don't have a lot of respect for him, because I don't think he actually understands what's going on. It hurts as a daughter to know my dad votes for a party that is actively doing bad to a lot of human rights, mainly because he believes in the economics of Republicans. I also hate having to be around my parents in the evening. Especially if they are watching the news, my mom definitely holds for frustration for my dad and takes it out by saying mean things to him. And I feel like my dad doesn't take it seriously, because I don't think he actually understands how scary this is for certain people. I wish my parents would do therapy together, and honestly, you guys should probably do therapy together if you actually want to make your marriage work, without resentment growing narrow. Box stop. The worst part is all these men talk about the economics of being a Republican, when all the data shows time and time again that those economics are absolutely horrible for 99.9% of us. They literally will cause harm to their families and others, because they believe lies and don't want to hear otherwise. Update. Thank you to all who commented. Update. We had a serious discussion. I went into more detail about my concerns and fears, and it was intense. I was much better at presenting the case. I gave him several hypotheticals that involved a particularly gruesome set of circumstances involving his ball sack. I won't bore you with the nitty-gritty, but the gist was to shift his perspective. I told him to seriously consider carrying a tiny fetus in his ball sack, and the fact that the risks were things like exploding balls, sepsis, etc., and the myriad of ways he could end up dead, permanently, physically injured and disfigured, or unable to produce a fetus in the future. If he didn't have the option of removing the fetus from his ball sack, I asked him if he would even want to take the risk, and he agreed that he'd be very likely to remove it. Unless he was ready for those risks, I asked him why in the world. I would be justified in telling him he has to carry it no matter what, and it might only be removed after it starts to explode out of his ball sack or his organs start shutting down, etc., once he seemed to start grasping the enormity of what abortion encompasses, and seeing why it's very important to not let unknown people control what options you have with no medical reason. I told him I lost a bit of respect for willful ignorance and that I can tell he avoided thinking about it because he knows in some way that it says something about his character, and that I resented having to even give him a hypothetical in the first place, and that if he cares for me and our daughter, he should automatically actively be using his empathy skills every day. I explained how I have demonstrated the capacity to care about and evaluate gender issues he's brought to my attention in the past. That was a difficult part of the conversation. I also told him that I do not trust him to always make good decisions for us, and that I feel alone in my shouldering of those responsibilities. He listened and let me talk a lot. He asked if I was going to leave him, and he was clearly nervous and bracing for the worst. I told him I'm not taking drastic steps like that, but I certainly will when it comes to keeping our daughter healthy and safe. I also started to say something about how I know I would lie to him in a heartbeat in a situation where our daughter needed an abortion or medical care, and he interrupted me to say you wouldn't have to lie because I'll be driving the car or buying the plane tickets and we will all go anywhere. We need to. Y'all. I burst into tears. We ended the conversation and he said, I laid a lot on him and he needed a break, but said he had things to think about. I didn't push any more politics, but I feel like my trust has been slightly restored. I'm not getting my hopes up, but I think he realizes that he's wading in dark and dangerous waters when it comes to our futures. Relevant comments can't _be _me. All of this reminds me so much of that scene in the show The Handmaid's Tale, where June finds out that she's not allowed to access her bank account anymore and that her husband has to sign something for her to get birth control pills. And her husband dismisses her concerns, basically saying, "That's okay, I'll take care of you. No big deal. It's fine." It's easy to dismiss a concern when that concern doesn't seem to affect you directly. And the problem is that no matter what we say, no matter what example we give, some people will always have a degree of removal from an issue that can affect their understanding and their empathy. My own husband is empathetic and caring, but he doesn't understand why I, someone staring down the barrel of menopause, am so angry about abortion access restrictions. He doesn't understand why I, a woman in a loving marriage that doesn't look likely to end anytime soon, am UPS about the end of no-fault divorce, or why I, as someone with no connection to prison, am upset about our horribly inequitable carceral system. And he will say he understands my objections, but then he's like, why bother wasting energy getting upset about it? I don't know how to get across to him that just because it doesn't apply to Muse right now doesn't mean it won't. Later, I also don't know how to get across to him that it's very difficult to see attacks on our ability to get a divorce or access an abortion as a direct slap against me as a woman. If someone punches someone else like me in the face while staring me directly in the eye to show me that they would be doing it to me if they could, that's very upsetting, but they aren't looking him in the eye, so he doesn't see it that way. Left. I admire the heck out of you for having this huge conversation with your husband. Thank you for making the case for all of us, and thanks for sharing with us. I hope your example can help others who need to have serious discussions like this with people in their lives. Gold sherbet, 7, 5, 5, 0. I'm glad you have this talk and that he is starting to reconsider his decisions, but I hope you are very clear with him that this isn't about him. Setting aside his views for the special case of you and his daughter, other women are entitled to the same respect and autonomy that he wants for his daughter. If his position is that he will pack the bags and buy the tickets for you all, but he will nonetheless continue to vote for all other women to be oppressed. GK. Not a good man-op. We talked about the women getting turned away from emergency rooms across the country because they were having pregnancy complications for babies they likely wanted to keep, and it was like, I could see a gear start cranking in his head, total silence, like he'd never considered that a lot of women who seek emergency abortions actually wanted their babies. Second story, insufferable man-child op, married his wife, only so she couldn't cheat on him while studying abroad, neglected her, and broke up with her only to beg her and get another chance. He pushed her to commit self-harm and is now having a meltdown. His wife divorced and ghosted him, saying he is abusive now. Op wants help from Reddit to reconcile with his wife again. I know I'll probably come off as the villain, but I need to get this out. I destroyed my marriage and I still don't even know why I'm in my 20s. So is my ex-wife. We had this fast summer romance. It was my first relationship that ever got serious. She wanted to go to college in another country, and I didn't want to lose her, so I said I'd go with her. Maybe that's where I first fed up, turns out, getting a work visa. When you don't know the language is pretty much impossible, and so the only way I could go with her was if we got married. She asked if I would marry her, and I said yes. At the time, I thought we would be getting married someday anyways. So why not shorten the timeline a bit? I really did love her. I want to emphasize this because my actions later on, admittedly, did not reflect that we had a small wedding. I've never been one for fancy things. And she said she'd rather spend the money on our future than on some elaborate party. She spent months searching for an apartment for us in the country she'd be studying in. But ultimately, we had to decide on her going alone first, when the school year started, and me staying in our home country while she continued to search for a place for us to stay. This was rough, and honestly, I couldn't stop imagining her finding someone new, or going out to college parties, the way all the movies show, and finding someone she wanted more than me. It's always been an insecurity of mine, especially because she's bi, and some things she'd say sometimes made me wonder if she'd like being with a woman. More. Long story short, she ended up getting sick, and we decided she should come back home and continue her studies here. She got really depressed after coming back home. She didn't want to go out because she didn't want to run into people. We knew she felt like she'd failed in her goals. I tried to help her get back on her feet, but she was just so in her head, and I just couldn't stand it. Sometimes something had shifted. Then she got angry with me a lot. We'd get into fights, and I hated it because I'm not a person who gets angry ever. She said I didn't do my fair share of chores, got upset whenever I'd spend too much time gaming and not enough attention on her. It was like I had to be this perfect picture of me she had in her head. Otherwise, I was a monster. One night, it got really bad. I had said I was going to do the dishes, and I honestly just forgot I was going to do them after one more round of COD with the boys. But I forgot, and as we were going to bed, she turned and saw the dishes in the sink and started screaming at me. I was already tired, and I had work in the morning, and honestly couldn't be bothered. She stomped downstairs and did them. And I'm pretty sure she intentionally made as much noise as possible, so I couldn't even sleep until she was done the next day, while I was at work. I decided I was done. It was like some sort of switch just flipped in my brain. I didn't want to go on being treated like this. I'd seen this kind of stuff play out with my own parents, and I didn't want to be miserable like them. So when I got home, I sat her down and told her I wanted a divorce. She seemed surprised, which I thought was strange because from my end it seemed like we were both unhappy. She took it pretty well. Oh, we had a long conversation about our feelings and stuff, and decided that I'd take the bed and she'd take the couch, and we'd sort out details in the morning. She asked if I was sure if I wanted to try therapy first, and I was so sure that this was what I wanted. It was rough lying upstairs in our bed. I was still able to hear her sobbing, but I was so sure this was what was best for both of us, then I don't even know how to describe it. It was like a switch flipped in my head again, and I started imagining what my life would be like without her. The morning coffee and kisses, the way she always remembered my birthday. My family forgets every year, her constant encouragement and seeing her smile. Then my mind flashed to how broken she looked when I told her we were done, and I cannot even begin to describe the stab in the heart I felt when I realized I had just hurt the person I loved most in this world. I knew I couldn't live without her, and I'd do anything to make her smile again. So I went downstairs. It was still late at night. I don't know how much time had passed and watched her try to wipe away her tears and tried to look put together. As I sat down next to her, I didn't even know what to say. The first thing I could think of was, I fed up so bad. She sat down her laptop and I saw it was open to some apartment search site. She asked me what I meant, and I told her I still loved her, but I didn't know why I said everything that I did, and I didn't deserve any sort of forgiveness. But could we please try again? And this saint of a woman held me in her arms as I broke down crying and forgave me. She said she wanted couple therapy, which I instantly agreed to. I would have agreed to anything she wanted if it meant staying together the next day was rough. She was starting her new job. I had terrible timing, I know, and she wouldn't even undress in front of me. She went into the bathroom to change clothes. There was no kiss goodbye before work. No kiss hello. After, she wouldn't even look me in the eyes. This went on for a while. It was a full week before she let me have sex with her, and things did slowly start to get better, but she was never fully the same. The fun, loving woman I fell in love with was gone. It's like the light in her eyes had gone out. I tried everything I could. I went to the therapy sessions, I bought her flowers, planned date nights, went out of my way to get her favorite chocolate, listened to the books she wanted about emotional labor, and I even created a chore chart so the housework could even out. And some days she'd be fine, but there were a lot of nights when I'd wake up to hear her crying in bed next to me. If I tried to comfort her, she'd just push me away and say she was fine. So at some point I stopped trying and just lay there and listened to her, trying to stifle her sobs, and wondered how many nights she was doing this. Other times she'd get angry. Any mistake I made, she'd always find a way to tie it back to how I abandoned her. It was like nothing I could ever do would be enough. I'd always be the monster who made her feel unloved. One of the worst gut punches was when I realized she'd changed her phone background from a photo of us to a bunch of photos of her friends. I asked her why she changed it, and she said she just felt like it. My background stayed as a picture of her until the very last day after months of this back and forth trying to please her. And one too many nights of listening to her crying in bed, I looked through her phone and saw something she'd written about how she felt trapped in our marriage the next day. I told her I wanted a divorce, that I knew she was unhappy and I was too, and this is what was best for both of us. I went further this time, packed a bag, went to a hotel, and turned off my location. She acted differently this time. The first time she was calm, self-assured, and said she wasn't going to beg for me, but this time was different. She was hysterical, literally got on her knees begging me to stay. It was really unlike her. I was honestly a little worried for her safety. But I left anyways. Hopped online, told the boys it was over, and tried to distract myself with gaming because it's the only thing that keeps me sane. Eventually I logged off and just lay in the hotel bed, listening to music, trying to fall asleep, and a song came on that meant something to our relationship. And it was like something broken. I couldn't stop crying. I ran to the car and drove back home, sobbing and speeding. I'm not sure how I didn't crash when I got there. I tried to unlock the door and the key wouldn't fit. She changed the locks already. I had to knock on the door of my own home, and the waiting seemed to last forever. I know it sounds pathetic, but as soon as she opened the door, I just collapsed into her. I was crying so much I nearly hyperventilated. She was standing really still. She didn't say anything, and her arms were flat. By her side, and I could tell she wasn't going to take me back this time. After I pulled myself together, I saw a bunch of trash bags by the table and knew it was probably my things. I asked her if she'd take me back. She hesitated for a while before saying she'd have to think about it. We had a long talk, a good talk about our whole relationship and everything that had happened. Somehow I managed to convince her that we could give it another try. I had gone from feeling so empty that morning to feeling so hopeful by the nighttime. I felt like this time really would be different. I started writing again. She even let me have sex with her that night, rather than waiting a week. Like last time, she said she felt broken and was saying some scary shit about wanting to end herself. But she's always been a bit melodramatic, so I knew she'd come around. I felt asleep, dreaming of a better life for us. But the next few days were hell. I woke up realizing that after I'd fallen asleep, she'd put her clothes back on and slept on the floor. She would barely eat. Everything she did seemed robotic. And every night, I'd have to pull her away from the sharp objects and pills, because she kept saying things about how she didn't want to live one night it got really bad. She was crying in bed as usual, and when I asked her what was wrong, she started begging me to end her, saying I was a coward for killing her soul and leaving her body here to suffer. I was really scared for both of us. I managed to talk her down somehow. And the next morning I came home to a note on the counter, saying she was staying at her mother's, and she wanted me out of here by the week's end. She left her ring on the note, so I knew she was serious, and honestly, I was just glad it wasn't a self-harm note. So I took the rest of my things and left. We've interacted a few times since then to get papers sorted, and now the divorce is final. From what I can tell, she seems happy. I guess she's moving soon and maybe has a new guy. I can't tell. I try not to look at her things for the life of me. I can't figure out why I did it. She's telling people I was abusive, maybe I was. My father seems to think I'm in the right, which makes me feel IY, because he's a misogynist prick. I loved her. I really did. And I'm starting to realize just how much she did for me. My apartment's a mess without her. My life's a mess. I keep forgetting because she's not here to remind me I have a toothache. But keep forgetting to make an appointment because she was always the one to do that. And I don't even think I have dental insurance anyways. I miss my dog. I miss her. I miss having someone to come home and vent to, and she was always so understanding of me. I took her for granted, and now she's off to some foreign country, probably effing her ex or something, and I'm stuck here away from my family and friends working my ARS off in a 95 with nothing to show for it. Third story, my husband asked me not to speak in German with him. But I still did to make my German fluent. He reacted like I was an Aral. I, 31, recently signed up to sit an advanced German exam with the full support and encouragement of my M30 husband. We live in Germany where I work in an English-speaking environment, so to get extra practice in, I told him that after X date we'd switch to German, which he is fluent and grew up here. We've managed 2 days so far, where even if he accidentally says something in English, I answer in German. But last night he told me he needed a break from me speaking German. I refused and said it's only for 10 weeks until my exam. Then I'll go back to English. He says I don't sound like his wife when I speak German. I asked if it was because my mistakes were jarring or my vocab was causing issues. He said it just didn't feel like he was speaking to his wife. I think it's vital that I stick to my plan to get my speaking practice in. He seemed a bit sad after I said no. What if I carry on off Dute's consensus? Arl people pointed out it must be tiring and irritating to not have a single normal conversation with your spouse. Notable comments, dramatic draw 6973. Your husband saying you don't sound like my wife in German isn't about your language skills. It's about missing the natural, intimate connection you share in English. While your dedication to learning is admirable, there's a smarter way to do this that won't strain your marriage instead of going full German too. 47. Try this schedule. Specific. German time slots, breakfast, evening walks, 1 meal a day. Keep emotional or important conversations in English, maybe do a fun weekly German date night. Use English when either of you needs to feel closer. Think of it like a musician practicing. They don't play intensively 24/7. They have dedicated practice times. You can still ace your exam without making your husband feel emotionally disconnected for 10 weeks. Bottom line, Opta, there are many ways to practice German, but you've only got one husband. Find the balance that lets you grow your skills while keeping your relationship strong. Your marriage shouldn't have to take a 10-week pause for an exam. Admirable Pumpkin 9. Yeah, I'm in the same position of being a native speaker and my partner wanting to practice. It's great, and I love his enthusiasm, but it can also feel tiring. Especially in the early stages of learning, there is a compromise to be had of scheduling specific days or times of days. So it feels less like being a teacher. 24/7 more isn't always better, and there's also something to be said about learning. By being exposed to the language outside of the relationship, everyone is more relaxed with their partner, mistakes don't matter, and you have predictable conversation topics. Being outside and talking to random people in random situations exposes you to new conversations, accents, and reactions. So going to meetups or chatting with a waiter can offer more practice. My W, not claiming you're the RS here, but I can only imagine going through the daily stress of work and whatnot, then coming home just wanting to relax and have a calm conversation with my wife, only to be met with an extra conversation every time we speak, where I'm teaching her grammar through each piece of dialogue. Cherith White. I understand why you want to do this, but it's unfair to your partner. I also live in Germany with a German-speaking partner. I did see 2 German last year and was very worried about the spoken part. So my partner and I had 1 day a week, which was German day, that was more than enough to help me pass. Perhaps suggest something like that if that doesn't work for him. Try to find a tandem partner to help with your spoken German, or even a friend with whom you can have German coffee dates. Changing the language of your long-term relationship is hard to do and can be exhausting for you both. And as others have said, your personality does shift when you change languages. I know I'm much less funny in German, for example, and that therefore would change the nature of my relationship with my partner if we were suddenly 100% speaking German all the time. Dr. DTHYTA, he's your husband, not your teacher, and he made a plea for just a break practice on someone else. From time to time, let him have a little bit of English from you at least once a day. Maybe set a plan where you speak English at breakfast, for example, so you have a block of time where he knows what to expect and when not to expect it. Forsaken Volume 2249 YT. So you decided you two would only speak the language, and then when he expressed his comfort, you said his feelings are not more important than your wants. Update about 9 hours later. Thanks to most of you for very well thought out and reasonable comments. I tried to read as many as possible and appreciate the different viewpoints. My husband came home this evening, we ate dinner, and I apologized in English for not being very understanding. I showed him the post. Some of the comments made us laugh so much. We discussed and found a healthy compromise that works for both of us to help me prep but not exhaust him. After a long day, I've also taken on your suggestions of other places I can try and hone my German conversation skills, and we'll try some of them out. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.